Hi, I'm Vicky. I'm going to tell you my story about how I got pregnant whilst I was wearing a coil, and then unfortunately how I miscarried. I got fitted with an IUD coil. Now, they fit in the palm of your hand, so it's a T-shape with two little strings hanging down. And it really hurts getting one fitted. I remember when I got it fitted, I was really crying because it wasn't anything that I'd ever felt before. And I was sure that wearing it would really keep me, safe from getting pregnant, because I didn't want to get pregnant at the time. I was young, I was planning to go travelling, and it seemed to be the easiest form of contraception for me and the most safe. Less than 1% of women wearing an IUD coil get pregnant. And of course, I fell into that category. I must have been wearing it for about 5 months at the time that I got pregnant. So how did I realise that I was pregnant? Well, I didn't at first. I had what seemed like a normal period, but it was quite light. And after it carried on for well over a week with soft, like spotting, slightly brown colour. Got to about 2 week long period, and I was chatting to my boyfriend about it. It's like, this isn't normal, what's going on? And he said, how about you try a pregnancy test? And I was like, what? A pregnancy test? So of course, the next day I went out to the shop, bought the cheapest one I could find, and I was at work. Went to the toilet at lunchtime, tried it out, and couldn't believe it when there was 2 stripes on the test. I was pregnant and I was fitted with a coil. So how on earth had that happened? My boyfriend came with me to the gynecologist, luckily, because I was new in Germany and couldn't really speak much of the language at the time, especially not around what was going on with pregnancies and thinking I was pregnant and what to do. My world was all of a sudden in a turmoil. And so the gynecologist took us into his room, did an internal scan. And the first thing we realised was there was no coil to be seen. Absolutely no sign at all. I couldn't believe it. And the next thing I couldn't believe was that there was a little baby growing and we could hear baby's heartbeat. Can you even imagine the range of emotions I was going through after that? Firstly, I couldn't fathom at all, what on earth had happened to the coil? I mean, like I showed you before, this thing, how could that fall out or even come out without me noticing? That's really bizarre. I still to this day really can't figure it out. Maybe it was in a previous period that was quite heavy and it came out when I was pulling a tampon out, but surely I'd have noticed that. I mean, you look at it in your hands and I really have no idea how it came out to this day. And then of course, all of a sudden, I had to get my head around, or we had to get our heads around, that we were pregnant. The last thing that we really were planning, because we were planning to go on a round the world trip with our rucksacks in 6 months' time. Life changed all of a sudden, really, really quickly. When you find out you're pregnant, your whole world changes, doesn't it? Because all of a sudden you're thinking, okay, when's the due date? Is it going to be a girl or a boy? What kind of parent am I going to be? Have I even got enough money? Where am I going to live? Well, it's like that for me at the time. We weren't even prepared for a baby to be coming along, and all of a sudden it was like, oh my goodness. I was 7 weeks pregnant when we went to the gynecologist. So that was almost 2 months already. That meant we had 7 months left to plan for everything, and we just really didn't know what to do. One thing was really for sure, it was that we were going to keep the baby. That's for sure. There was no way I could even think any other thoughts about not keeping the baby, even though it was a complete shock to me and I didn't know what we were going to do. We didn't tell many people about it at the time because we had to get our heads around it ourselves, figure out what was going on, what was going to be our plan. Were we still going to go travelling? Could we go travelling whilst I was pregnant? Could we go travelling maybe after baby was born, and where were we going to live, how were we going to earn money. There were so many things going through our heads. It was crazy times. But what did happen was that the spotting continued. So the light brown spotting did not stop for the next 2 weeks. And of course, continuous light spotting or any kind of bleeding at any stage of pregnancy is something that really needs to get checked out by your doctor. So I went back to the gynecologist 2 weeks later, and we had an internal scan and saw that baby had stopped living. There was no heartbeat anymore. From the measurements, it stopped about 8.5 weeks. So I think, so just over 2 months pregnant, and the heartbeat stopped. So it's not nice having a miscarriage. It really isn't. All of a sudden you've made plans for pregnancy, the whole thing, your head, like I just said before, everything's going over tick, 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 tick. What have I got to plan? How am I going to organise it? What am I allowed to eat? What can't I eat? Everything's going through your head, and then all of a sudden, boom, it's not there anymore. There's no life anymore. The gynecologist explained to me that I needed to have an operation called a D&C, which is Dilation and Curetage. I had no idea what that was going to be at all. All I knew was that in a week's time I would have to go to the hospital and they would basically take the baby out of me. That week, waiting until the hospital appointment, was one of the most horrific weeks of my life, because my body started expelling my baby already, and it comes out in thick jelly-like chunks. So going to the toilet is the most horrible experience, because you don't really want to look down. It's not nice. And anytime, I was just wondering what was going to come out next. Would I actually see my baby coming out? I really didn't know. You don't feel good either. It's such a mixture of emotions. First of all, like I said, you've got your head planning a baby, and the next minute there's no baby coming. And then of course all your emotions are all over the place, because your body was building up pregnancy hormones, and now all the pregnancy hormone levels are changing again. The morning of the operation was really awful, because I'd been given a pill to take 2 hours before the operation. Nobody explained to me why I needed to take the pill, and trustingly I took this pill, and 15 minutes later I found myself doubled up on the floor in pain, vomiting because it was hurting so much. I really crouched over. I had to take a paper bag with me in the car. My boyfriend, really worried about me, got into the hospital and went to the maternity ward, where unfortunately you have to go if you're having a miscarriage as well. Luckily the nurse saw me doubled up in pain and realised what it was, so I got painkillers. And it was only later, much later after the operation, that I realised this is the dilation stage, and dilation is the opening of your cervix. This is what happens when you go into labour and you're having contractions, when your cervix is opening up to 10 centimetres. No one had told me this. Luckily after that the pain calmed down and I got ready for going into the operation. After that everything was pretty much a blur. When I came out, I was given, I think it was morphine, and I was happy about that. I was happy just to lie there, and luckily I was in a hospital at the time that let me stay in for 2 days. And they had the most wonderful nurses there. One of the nurses came up to me with a box full of trinkets and said it would be a really good idea to take something to remember my baby by. Really, really nice gesture. With further miscarriages, I have been to hospitals where they really didn't care. I was in and out, I was just a number, and that for me, that's just awful. When you have a miscarriage, you need to be treated with sympathy and care. But that's another story. Having a miscarriage isn't something to be taken lightly at all. The range of emotions that a woman goes through when she's miscarried. First of all, you're blaming yourself. You're wondering why it happened to you. Am I not good enough? So many thoughts, self-harming thoughts go through your head, because you do blame yourself a lot, and it takes a long time to get over it. Also your body takes a long time to get over it, so it's a mental and a physical adjustment again afterwards. And I think for me, only other women that have miscarried can truly understand how it feels to miscarry. So how did I get pregnant with a coil? The coil fell out. Now normally a coil, you can feel it coming out like into your vagina. The two strings that come down should hang really just gently out of your cervix. And since I've conducted a lot of research on it, so firstly I found out that under 1% of women do get pregnant when fitted with a coil. And in these cases, mostly these women lose the coil, so the coil falls out, which is obviously the category I fitted into. And nowadays they advise women fitted with a coil to check on a monthly basis if you can actually feel the strings hanging slightly out of your vagina, something I never knew to do at the time. Do have a check to make sure your IUD coil is still fitted. Thanks for listening to my story. I hope it's helpful for you on your journey and deciding whether to fit yourself with an IUD coil perhaps. Don't freak out. I mean, I'm under 1% of the population of IUD coil wearers that it happened to, and like I said, just check to see if it's there. Normally it should work. I was just one of the unlucky ones. Take care, bye for now.